And I hope you all had your coffee or whatever drink works for you this morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. We are now recording. Our coffee conversation did not make the recording this morning. But it's great to see all of you again. We're going to go ahead. We have a very rich morning to this morning, and I'm sure as I talk, more folks will be joining in. So welcome as you join. Welcome back for day 2 of our roundtable, and again, our first virtual pandemic roundtable, and hopefully our last. Thank you all for being here and trying out this new approach. And a special thanks again, as I also said on Tuesday, to everyone behind the scenes who is made today happen. And there's a partnership group that meets every other month that plays a central role in this process, as well as a subgroup of folks. Some of you'll see today as small group moderators who have also been invaluable in the process of putting this all together. So, like I said, on Tuesday, we're really looking for opportunity from chaos. I was saying before we started that yesterday, at least out my window, was rainy, and we it fit the mood of kind of saying, this is where we're at. There's some real challenges ahead of us. Today, out my window at least, is sunny, and I hope the sun's coming your way too. And really thinking about solutions and thinking about particularly supporting our workforce that we talked about is doing a huge job right now, and many of you are here and you are the workforce, so I really appreciate the opportunity to have the presenters we have today, and the opportunity for discussion. The schedule today should look very similar to Tuesday, more or less, in terms of the order. So we'll start with our first presentation at about 9:20 or whenever we get to it. The second presentation will follow. Our discussant is actually a third speaker today, which we're very excited about. And then we'll have some time for small group discussion, or full group, discussion. We'll take a little screen break, and in that process also transition into the discussion groups, and that'll be roughly at about 10:40. We'll then come back towards the end. Definitely want to make sure you all have the 30 minutes to discuss, and we'll conclude at 11:30 and talk about some next steps.
Megan, I had a question about
Yes.
how to get the recordings. I emailed the email address that it was on it, but it came back that it wasn't the right email address. So I'm just wondering, to whom should I email to request that recording?
Great. We'll get back to you specifically, but I'll show you all this morning as we get through the slides where you'll be able to find all the recordings and materials for today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan.
Of course. So as per usual Zoom logistic rules or guidelines, please mute when you're not speaking. We also have cameras. You're welcome to have your camera on or off. I understand that many of you have kids, dogs, things going on around you. Do what you need to do. Step away when you need to step away. The chat will be available to chat with everyone, as well as with the hosts and co-hosts. During the presentation portions, I'm not asking presenters to pay attention to the chat. So know that if you put something in there that myself or Brenda, who is helping with today, also will note that, and if we're able to bring it up in the large group discussion, we will. We'll also have the opportunity for a few minutes of pressing questions right after each presentation. The recording, we are now recording. The presentations this morning will be recorded. The breakout rooms will not be recorded for posting. you might be asked about recording for note-taking purposes by the moderator. That's totally up to you. You're very welcome to say, no, thank you. And that is not a problem at all. If you're having tech trouble, please reach out to Eric. He's in the chat here, and you can see his notes around recording, so you can reach out specifically to him. He will be your best bet for getting an answer. You can also email me as well. I will be able to actually track that today since I'm not presenting. In terms of captioning, we on Tuesday had a captioner. Today we've struggled to get a hold of somebody. If you are in need of captioning, I apologize. We will be able to go back and add captioning afterwards. There's, as you know, with technology and different groups in different places, sometimes logistics just don't line up. So if this applies to you, please let us know what we can do. Then finally, I know that at least some of you are observing the Great Oregon Shakeout, and some of you might get notifications on your phone. I know I am supposed to get one from OSU at 10:15, and some of you may be doing this at a different time. Go ahead and mute yourself, step away, participate as you need to. We're not going to stop the presentations or observe that piece on our end. But we did get the word out, so I feel like we've done part of what the goal of the shakeout is. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, do not even worry about it. Again, thank you all for being here. This is my word cloud of how you all identified when we asked you all to identify as a policymaker, practitioner, or researcher. I love the answers. I think I'm going to do this forever now in terms of finding out who you all are, how you identify, and I echo what we said on Tuesday by we benefit and we do better by talking across our silos and our groups, and it feels more and more necessary these days to set up these opportunities for conversation, because we're not running into each other as we would potentially in other areas, and some of us may never. And so I'm very excited about all the folks that are on today and joining us. Yesterday, like I said, we talked about the family perspective and as well as provider perspective of accessing childcare, of the realities of living through this COVID-19 pandemic. We had some great conversation, and I look forward to continuing that on today. We're focusing on using professional development to meet the diverse needs, strengths, and priorities of our children and providers. And I would say we can extend this out even further and say our support people, the people that support the providers, all the way up to our state administrators and everyone that's focused on this work. To kind of prime you and to give a little sense of some thoughts that I saw from the notes from day one, I found it really interesting to read and hear what happened in the discussion groups. Some thoughts that came up that I wanted to echo today are, there was a lot of information presented on Tuesday. I would say enough to fill a whole week of time to discuss. And there's a question of what will we do with this research? Yesterday was a good start of giving these pictures of the challenges, but how do we follow through? How do we turn this into something actionable? How does this feel like something we can use to move forward? Another piece that came up a lot is how can we support the field? Talking about how much people are taking on. Providers were talked about quite a bit around the perspective of them taking on a lot of stressors for families and serving a very important role. And I would say all of you here are playing an important role, and we're all taking on stressors at different levels. And so how do we support the field? And we'll talk about that today. there was discussion around leaving people out of research impacts the policies that come out. And that was brought up and is definitely a piece of where we need to go. And I look forward to hearing more about how you all are thinking about that today in the breakouts. And then finally, none of us have been through a pandemic before. That was a comment from one of the groups, and I thought that was a great reminder of giving each other grace as we navigate this and this challenge and challenging time. As I mentioned on Tuesday, and I want to remind you all again, the brief, we will have a brief paper that can also be turned into other ways of getting the word out. That will be, we're calling a roundtable summary. This will highlight the presentations, talk about key themes from the breakout, and provide some recommendations for policy and research. If you're interested in being a part of this process or want to provide some feedback, be a part of the translation, please reach out. You can email me or the partnership email and let us know. We're always looking for more folks. And we do hope that this will really push the conversation and have us leave with something tangible. That what do we do? What can we do next? How can we, how can this roundtable and how can our 2 mornings together have a ripple effect into this coming year, which we know is going to be very busy. As I mentioned, small group discussions will happen again. We'll take a break before them so you can breathe for a minute, step away from your screen, get your coffee, snack, coffee, tea, whatever, caffeinated or non-caffeinated beverage, and join us within a discussion with about 9 to 10 peers to talk about 3 main questions. What did you learn? What has this made you curious about? How can you use this information? What do you still want to know? What's missing? These are not prescriptive. These are ideas on getting you started in conversation. We are excited to hear your thoughts and reflections. Guidelines for today's discussion, similar to last year. Speaking from your own experience is always an important thing to do, and being aware of that, listening actively, assuming positive intent, being willing to make and admit mistakes. We're all doing our best. We have strengths, we have limitations. Ask if you don't know an acronym or don't know what we're talking about. Of course, I say this as a guilty party of someone who didn't understand the acronyms and now I've internalized them. And so know that everyone's at a different place in that, internalizing all of the child care acronyms, and we're all in different places. So please reach out. And finally, no one should be expected to speak for an entire group of people. This is an important reminder for all of us, and this spans all sorts of groups, right? But an important reminder for us to keep in mind. And then finally, I want to bring attention to the roundtable, to the different ways the Oregon Child Care Research Partnership is working to foster networking and communication and collaboration across. We will put together, like I mentioned, the roundtable summary. It's still not too late to share for the sharing tool. If you're like, ooh, I did have something to share. If you have something outreach-wise too, you're welcome to simply email me. You don't have to go through that form. There are, oops, my light turned off. There we go. The Facebook page is up and running, and we have some new posts up there. Please check it out. I'll show you where that is in just a minute in the early learning facts and findings. So Nadia had a question about where to find the recordings. They are not posted yet. They will be posted here, either inside these folders, and eventually we'll have an edited version that is that you don't have to go into the folder to find. But for getting this information out, we also have the slides for today up there, and if we don't have them already, we will soon have the sharing tool, the working draft sharing tool up and posted too. So if you take a look and you're like, oh, I actually do have something I could add, please check it out. We'll make sure that's up as soon as possible. As I've mentioned, thank you. As I mentioned, for the Early Learners website, this is a website that started before my time. I cannot take credit for its presence. We have worked on organizing the information, and you'll see there is, if you do share in the sharing tool, there's a research tab that we'll be adding to, and we're continuing to slowly develop the content on this, and we'll be doing pieces to link the social media to bring people to the website, because there are some really great things in here. If you are someone doing research, if you're somebody who's writing grants for community-based organizations and you need some facts and findings about childcare, we want to help. And if you don't see what you need, click on this Ask a Question. It'll send our team an email, and we're happy to see how we can help. Here's our Facebook group. If you go in and do a search for Oregon Child Care Research Partnership, it should pop up. Again, if you have something that you're like, ooh, I'd like to get the word out, right now we have a post up about today about our event. Then we also have there's some recruitment going on for a household survey. Check that out. It's in English and Spanish. And then there's also an after school network conference going on. So if you have other things like that, send them our way, and we'll do our best to get it out. And eventually we'll make our way into Twitter and other social media. We'll see. So without further ado, enough hearing from me. Let's hear from some others. We're going to start today with Shannon Lipscomb from Oregon State University Cascades, who's going to speak to nurturing quality with a trauma lens through professional development and the impacts of roots of resilience. I'm very excited to hear from Shannon. Then we'll transition to designing equity-focused projects, lessons learned from the Master Trainer pilot with Lorelei Mitchell from Portland State University, Lupe Campos from the Latino Network, and Mira Botra from Neighborhood House. Then we'll follow that up with Isela Morales from Community Action CCR&R, who will be speaking about her role and how her work what it looks like to be a quality improvement specialist in Oregon. So without further ado, let's go ahead and I will stop my share and introduce Shannon. Shannon?
Hi.
Do I need to do something here? Stop my share.
I will go ahead and share on my end. Hope we can get this right.
This is the hardest part of the day.
Do you see my presentation?
We see your slide view.
Yep, we need to swap the display again.
Oh boy, okay. Shoot. I'll stop for a second. Sorry, I thought I had it just perfect. How about now?
You're good.
Perfect?
Perfect.
Okay, thanks for your patience. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm really pleased to speak with you about this research on nurturing quality with a trauma lens, focused on professional development. And I wanted to give a big shout out to two of our co-authors in this work who are here with us today, Bridget Hatfield and Hillary Lewis, both from Oregon State University. Also, big thanks to Emiko Gogadebos, who is not able to be here, and the rest of the Roots of Resilience research team. There's a huge effort to pull all of this together over a course of many, many years, actually, going on 5+ years. Also want to take just a quick moment and say a huge thank you to early childhood teachers and families who have participated with us. None of this could be possible without their participation and partnership. So lots of thanks to them, as well as to Phil Fisher and his team from the Center for Translational Neuroscience at the University of Oregon, and you heard from him on Tuesday. We've also worked with colleagues at the University of Southern Maine on this work, and a number of consultants and trainers that have really helped support professional learning and development of our team. And all of this has been funded by the U.S. Department of Education through a grant with the Institute for Education Sciences. So what I'm going to do with our time today is to introduce a framing for resilience, move on to thinking about nurturing that resilience with a trauma lens, and then focus in on this Roots of Resilience program and the research that we've been conducting. So resilience. So on Tuesday, both Phil and Megan shared about enormous stressors and challenges that we know are happening and we learn more deeply about among families, children, families, and providers. And how those stressors are increasing exposure to toxic stress and the opportunity and power of resilience. So that's what we're picking up today. So we'll start with a definition of resilience. And as a body of researchers, we've come together around this way of thinking about resilience as a process. It's positive adaptation in the face of adversity. So a couple things that I particularly love about resilience is that it's a natural human process that every single person, every child, every adult is capable of and is just a natural part of our lives. But it also is something that has to be nurtured. It has to be fostered and encouraged. And it is something that can be nurtured intentionally, and it happens over time. And really at the heart of that nurturing is these supportive relationships. So that's what we're going to focus on today. There are many other protective factors that support resilience. And at the center of much of that are these nurturing relationships. So then we'll move on to thinking about nurturing that resilience with a trauma lens. So I'll define trauma for us as well. So we define trauma as a deeply distressing event or series of events. And that can be caused by ACEs, those adverse childhood experiences like abuse, neglect, exposure to violence, living with a family member who has become incarcerated or is living with an uncontrolled substance abuse problem or untreated mental illness. But it can also be caused by many things that often are not captured in those traditional ACEs. So trauma can absolutely be caused by racism and other forms of discrimination, as well as historical trauma, natural disasters, pandemics, and other forms of community trauma. So right now, today, many people, many communities are facing traumas on top of traumas. And this is where I usually take a deep breath. I encourage you to do so as well, because this is some heavy stuff. And so what can we do? One of the things that we can do is to provide care in a way that is trauma-informed. So trauma-informed care, I'm going to provide just a basic framework for you. You can learn more about this from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. I have the website here on the slide, or from following up more with us in Roots of Resilience or others. So trauma-informed care is when a program, an organization, or a system realizes the widespread impact of trauma, recognizes the signs and the symptoms of trauma, and responds to all of that knowledge and recognition by fully integrating knowledge about trauma into policies and procedures and practices, and additionally actively resist re-traumatization. So that's what we're striving for. Trauma-informed care differs from trauma-specific services in a really powerful way. So trauma-informed care is something that we can do universally. We can do it everywhere. We can all of us do that. Trauma-specific services are things that require more advanced training and experience. So where are we in early learning with trauma-informed care then? Fortunately, we do have a growing number of opportunities to learn about trauma and how it affects development, and to also engage in ideas about resilience. presently, many of those are what we might call light touch opportunities. So a one-time workshop is a great example. This presentation is a good example. So we have those on one end of the spectrum. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have what are very intensive and expensive, potentially very powerful programs like Head Start Trauma Smart. Those are a little bit of research showing some strong impacts of that so far, but much more research to do. And what we noticed is there's this big in between these ends of the spectrum, and one of the needs, we need many things. One of the needs that our team has worked to try to help support is professional development and support for early childhood teachers and providers that's specifically designed for them, for their context of early care and education. So that's what I'm going to share with you today, is what we've created, kind of where we are and what we're learning from the research. So the program is called Roots of Resilience, Teachers Awakening Children's Healing. The purpose of this program is to support early childhood teachers, to nurture resilience with children impacted by trauma. And when we say teachers, we are very intentionally referring to every and all adults that are caring for children in home-based settings to more formal childcare centers. So lead teachers, assistants, directors, owners, specialists, the whole team. So what we've created is an online course and video-based coaching. So even 5 years ago, we knew that many people couldn't make it to in-person opportunities, especially people who are caring full-time for children. And so we focused on this online option, but the video-based coaching can also be done in person. And one of the important ideas in this work, coming from that universal approach to trauma-informed care, is that we don't have to be a therapist to help a child or a family strengthen resilience. We can do that as people that are in children's lives every day. There's one other piece I want to make sure to mention before moving on. It's not on the slide. Roots of Resilience is not a curriculum. So it is an approach to the work that can complement, come alongside, be implemented with really any developmentally appropriate early childhood curriculum. So it's professional learning and development for teachers to help strengthen that trauma lens that we bring to the work. Okay, 4 key ideas from our conceptual framework that I want to share with you. The first is that we're thinking about early childhood teachers as gardeners of children's roots of resilience. We focus on caregivers' strengths, self-regulation, and supporting and nurturing self-care. Secondly, Roots of Resilience overlays a trauma lens on what teachers already know and do well. So we built very directly and explicitly from best practice in early care and education. And through that, one area of particular focus is strengthening resilience through responsive interactions during everyday moments. And then finally, we've done this, created an online setting, but really trying to keep at the forefront as much as possible as this relationship-based professional development. So I'll tell you just a little bit about the program. The online course has 3 parts. It is run in 6 modules. It's self-paced, and participants can earn up to 30 hours if they complete the whole course, 30 hours. Of Set 2 training on the Oregon Registry. The first part really focuses in on resilience and then brings alongside trauma lens and how trauma affects development. Then moving on to identifying children's needs using that trauma lens and working in close partnership with families and with specialists. And then thirdly, moving into these restorative relationships and focus on self-regulation in everyday moments. The course is designed to be very interactive as we can be. It includes activities, self-reflection, sharing with others. So those 30 hours are not all sitting and listening to a presentation like this. And teachers are telling us, we've been doing this for a number of years now, and they've been telling us that they find it helpful, engaging, interesting, and really relevant to their work. The video-based coaching part of the program, teachers are filming themselves during everyday moments with children about 20 minutes a week using an iPad that we've checked out to them. They upload that film automatically to a secure server at OSU, and a team member goes in and watches that film and looks for small moments, these little tiny moments between an adult and a child where the teacher's already doing the thing that we are planning to coach that next week. So every coaching session has a special focus, and we're looking for that in the film ahead of time, and then responding to that by sharing in that web session, here's what we're talking about today. Here are 3 examples of you already doing that. So let's talk more about why that's so impactful for children who have experienced trauma, and maybe how we can brainstorm ideas to do even more of that. That's kind of what the coaching session, how that goes. It's 100% strength-based. We don't do any correction. And this is built very much based on and in partnership with another coaching program called FIND, the Filming Interactions to Nurture Development Program, led by Phil Fisher, who you heard from on Tuesday. They built us coaching on serve and return, and we take that framework and hone in specifically on serve and return interactions that are focused on self-regulation, showing children self-regulation in those moments, and the teachers returning that with a way that specifically supports self-regulation. So our theory of change is that when teachers participate in either one of these options, the course or the coaching or both, that they gain experiences and perspectives and knowledge and some skills that help them to identify and respond more sensitively to children's needs, knowing this is already an area of focus for teachers, but we've given them another tool, especially for children that are impacted by trauma. So then that should help children to feel more safe, empowered, and valued in those early learning settings. Their stress response systems should become less reactive, and over time, their engagement and self-regulation should improve along with their learning and well-being. So this is our theory, and then that takes us into the research. So the research, we're examining that theory of change, and we've been doing 2 phases of research so far. The first is a focus on implementation. So we've been trying things out and getting a lot of feedback and making continuous improvement. So we did that research for 2 years, and then we moved on to an outcomes phase. So phase 1, I'm not going to share the findings with you now, but you have access in that folder that Megan showed us. I sent her 2 things to post there, a version of this research brief in English and a version in Spanish. And it summarizes the learnings from our first 2 years, and it also refers to a longer full-length journal article if you want to know more about the rationale and the research base, and also more about our research. Okay, so I'm going to focus on phase 2, which is outcomes. So this all happened before the pandemic. Fortunately, we were able to conduct a study over the whole year. And what we did was we recruited 30 teachers from the broader Central Oregon area in Deschutes, Crook, and Jefferson counties. We recruited about a third family child care providers, teachers working in centers and Head Start programs. And they all signed up because they were interested in this professional development program, and they identified that they worked with children who were probably impacted by trauma, okay? And so we recruited them into the study, and then we asked them, would you prefer the course or the coaching? And when they told us their preference, we said, okay, great. So then we are going to randomly assign you to get that intervention now or later. So that created this rigorous research design with the wait list, not getting the intervention during the course of the study, but they had access to it after the study. So the study started out with observations and assessments. Then we do that random assignment that I just described, and then we do more observations and assessments about 4 months later. And after all of that, the waitlist group gets access to the program, and the course group can start coaching if they want, and the coaching group can start the course if they want. For the research, we also recruited up to 4 children per classroom or group to participate in individual observations and assessments that are focused on the child. And that resulted in 88 preschool-aged children participating with us. I want to mention before I share anything further that 2 things about the sample. One is that there was a lot of adversity. So teachers, 65% of the teachers reported 4 or more ACEs in their own lives. And in the young children already by preschool, 64% of them had 1 or more ACE reported by their parents, and a third had 3 or more ACEs. The second thing I want to mention about the sample, it is very limited in diversity with respect to race, ethnicity, and language. So 91% of the teachers identified as white, and 85% of the children were identified as white. And the overwhelming majority of the others had identified as Latinx, Latino, or Latina. And I think only one teacher was male in this sample. So we have quantitative and qualitative results. Quantitatively, here are the things we did for observations and assessments. We looked at teachers' emotional support with the class measure, the classroom assessment scoring system. We looked at children's engagement with the in-class. It's an individualized version. It's specifically looking at a particular child and their engagement with teachers and peers and tasks. We did direct assessments with young ones and through kind of games and assessments with math and literacy and self-regulation. What did we find? We found positive impacts of participation in Roots of Resilience compared to that waitlist control for teachers' emotional support and for children's negative engagement. So we saw reductions in negative engagement, and that includes conflict with teachers, conflict with peers, and behavioral control. So we saw an improvement in behavioral control and less conflict in children whose teachers participated in the intervention. We also saw a significant improvement in math skills, but not in literacy or self-regulation or positive engagement. So there's a number of things what you're doing to dig into and unpack and understand these findings further. I'll share one of them with you today for the sake of time. This emotional support domain of the class has 4 components, and those are called dimensions. And we took a look at those dimensions, and we looked by the 3 groups of teachers. Those in the wait list are the orange bar. Those that were in the course during the intervention study are in the darker green bar, and those were in the coaching or in the lighter green bar. And I'll bring your attention to the 2 pieces of this that show an asterisk, and the asterisk means that it was a statistically significant difference. So teachers who participated in the course showed actually a pretty sizable, a pretty large improvement in teacher sensitivity, which we didn't see in either of the other groups. When we look at negative climate, we see, and negative climate is something that doesn't happen a lot, so seeing a shift in that is actually fairly important and exciting. So we're actually seeing a decrease or in negative climate, looks like an increase, but it's reversed for teachers participating in coaching in particular, a little bit also for those in the course. And thanks to the hard work and dedication of Hillary Lewis, a graduate student with us at OSU, we have qualitative interviews on 7 of our participants. And she and another researcher coded and analyzed transcripts from these interviews for reliability and examined them really systematically through content analysis. We are learning a number of things from these interviews, and I wanted to share 3 themes that specifically relate to impacts of Roots of Resilience from teachers' perspectives. So they told us in their own words that their thinking or perspective taking shifted, and this was shown by all 7 of them. So I have just one example of that for you here. A teacher that participated in the course says it just helped me constantly reiterate to myself, they're not doing this to be a pain. They're doing this for a reason, and they're calling out for help. So as I was reading that, I was like, oh my, that is what he's doing. The second category is a shift in day-to-day interactions with children. And we had 5 of the 7 teachers provided an example of this. One teacher says, that's more on my radar, like every afternoon to just kind of check in with him. I look forward to that part of my day. Whereas a couple of months ago, it didn't have that, or it wasn't on my radar to check in with this kid every day. And then finally, 6 of the 7 teachers showed or expressed something related to a shift in self-regulation or self-care. And here's one example. I'm more aware of my own emotional states. I can be like, hey, I'm gonna walk away for a few minutes because I'm really frustrated. And then the final quote that I wanted to share with you was from a teacher who shared that initially she was really intimidated about this idea of being filmed when she was providing care or teaching with kids. And so, but then at the end she said, it actually ends up being really fun. I got so much out of it that I would really recommend that anybody do it. So implications from this work, I'm really excited and I want to learn more about this initial finding we have that this strength-based professional development can reduce negativity. And again, we saw that in reductions of negative climate overall and also in reductions in negative engagement among children. And the negative engagement, I think, is especially important because we have these as another set of findings where at baseline, we saw a link pretty consistently between children's ACEs, those average child experiences, and more negative engagement. So then in the professional development program is helping to decrease that negative engagement. And that's really exciting. And then additionally, another kind of bigger implication for the field, I think, is that when we do professional development focused on resilience, that's first and foremost is resilience, and then a trauma lens comes alongside it, that we can benefit teachers as well as children. I mentioned already the limitation in the sample in racial and ethnic and linguistic diversity. Fortunately, we've been able to remedy a lot of that in the work we're doing after the research, but it certainly is a big limitation of the research. And I wrote down that message that I saw, leaving people out of research impacts policy. And I fully take that to heart and would love to talk with you all more about how we can continue to work on more inclusive and diverse samples and research. We have a small sample as well, and it's a short-term study, so we were only looking at the first intervention that people completed. A number of our teachers did do both the course and the coaching, or vice versa. And then finally, measures. So the class is not a measure of trauma-informed care. It is certainly aligned with our theory of change, and it is something that we would expect to see shift when we're working from a trauma lens, but we need better measures out there. I will make one small additional mention, and I could talk later for much longer if you're interested in this, but we've done some work in other studies to see whether the class seems to be biased against home-based programs, and we're not seeing that at all. And that makes sense because it actually comes from kind of a legacy that is developed initially for all types of care, not for centers. So just wanted to mention that. Final last slide I have for you is about scale up. So there's been a lot of interest in this work, and we are very committed to making this accessible in ways that work for communities. So we've worked primarily for the majority here in our Central Oregon community with local sponsors after the research to try to scale this up and increase access. We've done that through scholarships for the online course, which we have going on as well right now. We launched into workshops, which were not part of the research, but are super fun and very much wanted by providers, teachers, as well as kind of directors and people who set all this up. We moved online to webinars during the pandemic, try to make them very interactive, much more interesting than listening to a presentation. And we've been just really fortunate to be able to work with a much more diverse group of teachers, both in race and ethnicity as well as languages. So right now we have a number of bilingual providers in the online course cohort that we've got running right now. And I'm working with a bilingual trainer to offer our first webinar series in Spanish in November. And that gets to this next idea around train the trainers. So we have a couple of different efforts, one in coaching and one in webinar workshops right now, trying to partner more with others outside of the university. And so I'm eager and interested in chatting with those of you who would like to discuss that and share ideas. You can reach me at my email address. We also have a blog, and I'll post this in the chat here once I wrap up. And it's not super fancy or anything like that. It's less pretty than what Megan is putting together for the Early Learners website, but it does give you a link to our online course, and there's a video and some testimonials about Roots of Resilience, and our research is all getting posted up there. We have a couple of research articles that are under review right now, and so once they get accepted for publication, I'll make sure that we get those research briefs available in English and Spanish as well for everyone, and post those up on our blog. So thank you so much, and eager to hear your thoughts and questions.
Thank you, Shannon. Oh, I forgot, I love this idea. If you want to take a moment to unmute yourself right now and clap, we can pretend we're all in the same room together. Thank you. Thanks for humoring me.
That was delightful.
I know, it feels good, right? We have about, I think we have time for one, maybe two, but like one question if it's like super pressing and you need to get it out. Otherwise, we'll transition. Okay. Everyone's excited. I see some work in the chat going on.
I just want to say, Shannon,
yes,
that you know, it's very amazing to hear that you guys are looking to be more diverse and that you are including and that you're searching to get more diverse. And it's just such a hopeful thing that, you know, you guys are taking that step. And I don't know, it just makes me very happy. When you said those words, the sun came out and went, ah!
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I can't, who's talking? I'm trying to look for who's talking right. Who was just sharing that?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Nadia Lucci, and I just turned on my camera.
Okay. Thank you, Nadia. I'm really eager to work with all of you who are interested. So Nadia, maybe you and I can connect and share some ideas about that too. And somebody asked about in the chat about the online course is not yet available in Spanish. It just takes more. The course itself is really multifaceted and is a lot of it's narrated. So we very much want to make it available in Spanish. We need more resources and support to do that. So if anyone wants to partner with us to try to go after some shared funding or something like that, please let me know because it's high on our priority list.
Great, thank you. All right, let's go ahead and transition now. So thank you, Shannon. We'll transition. So next up we have Lorelei and team to speak about the Growing Master Trainer project. And so now we'll do some tech transition.
All right.
Here we go. And we'll see what happens.
That's right. All right, well, thank you, Megan. We are really excited to be here today to talk with you about designing equity-focused projects using this specific example of the lessons that we have learned from the Growing Master Trainers project. And before I kind of jump into the presentation, I just wanted to say some really important thank yous. So first and foremost, I wanted to thank the Community Council. And this is the leadership group that has really been growing the project. I have learned so much from this group over the past 3-ish years and really deeply value the relationships that we have all forged together. Likewise, working with the OCCD team, in particular Kim Larson, and with Heidi McGowan, the project manager and facilitator, has really been a privilege. I have to say it's just a rare opportunity in my experience to work with such a great group of folks. Last but certainly not least, I also want to acknowledge the creativity and I almost want to say daring of the Early Childhood Funders Learning Circle in really supporting this very unusual project. I've reflected on this a lot, and to my mind, I feel like this is such a great example of where I would really like to see philanthropy sort of put more of their efforts. So I wanted to start by talking about the original project design. The pilot design has actually evolved quite a bit over time, which is kind of why we're here actually today, is to talk about the factors that have contributed to that evolution and how we can maybe apply those lessons learned to future projects. But what you see here in this kind of logic model is the thinking at the outset. In a nutshell, there were kind of 2 primary goals, and one was to increase the number of master trainers representing marginalized communities in Oregon, including communities of color, linguistically diverse communities, and rural and frontier communities. And then the second primary goal was to increase the number of culturally and linguistically responsive higher level trainings, so the Set 2 and Set 3 trainings, And the hope was that by doing so, by increasing the number of trainers and these higher level trainings, more marginalized child care providers would participate in professional development, hypothetically improving the quality of care provided, and then ultimately improving educational outcomes for children of color, linguistically diverse children, and children in rural and frontier areas. And the primary mechanism, as originally envisioned for bringing all of this about, was a mentorship model. So partnering kind of promising trainers with folks who had more experience in the field. A second sort of less clearly articulated goal at the outset was to examine the current system requirements and think about making recommendations for changes that would increase accessibility to underrepresented trainers. So a key part of the design was also the recruitment and creation of the community council. So this is a group of representatives of culturally specific organizations, largely in the Portland metro area, combined with folks representing several rural frontier CCR&Rs and one hub. Now, as an advisory group to the process, the role of this group was a little bit unclear at first, which is something that I will return to later. OCCD, the Oregon Center for Career Development, was contracted to lead the work, and an outside facilitator was brought in to facilitate the actual community council meetings. So this gives you an idea of where we kind of started out. I also wanted to talk just a little bit about my role as evaluator and how that has actually really evolved over time as well. So the original evaluation contract was pretty modest in scope and focused on two basic outcomes: this change in the number of master trainers and the change in the number of Set 2 and Set 3 trainings. I was, however, also invited at the outset to participate in the monthly community council meetings. And as a result of getting that kind of up close and personal view on the process, I pretty quickly realized that a more developmental approach would probably be more appropriate, along with a very explicit and intentional equity focus kind of woven all throughout the evaluation. So one of the first changes that I made to the evaluation design was a kind of rapid feedback mechanism for gauging engagement in and satisfaction with the community council process. And this mechanism has actually remained in place now over the course of the project, hopefully continuing to elevate voice, support accountability, and allow for timely adjustments. If anything has been sort of the rule in this project, it's just been iteration, right? It's just been a very iterative process. We've also invested a considerable amount of time and energy in several rounds of in-depth interviews with all sorts of project partners, in addition to collecting the more quantitative data that was called for in the original evaluation design. As other needs and requests for evaluation support have emerged from the community council, as well as from the project team, we have responded in kind. So again, it's been this real kind of just unfolding of trying to meet the needs of this, again, pretty unusual project. So what was going on in those early meetings that suggested to me that a developmental approach might be more appropriate? I've thought about this a lot, remembering how I felt when I first saw the initial project materials, and just remembering on paper how great the project looked. It had important equity-related goals. There seemed to be representation of culturally specific organizations, and they were bringing in what seemed to be a really innovative facilitation approach. So it seemed like a really exciting opportunity. In retrospect, I have come to realize that in large part of that was due right to my own position as a highly privileged, highly educated white person, bringing all of my own blind spots, faulty assumptions, and biases to the process. In either case, the proof, right, is in the pudding. And as the project unfolded in those early months, it really became clear that there actually were some fundamental problems with the initial approach. The community council meetings became pretty tense at times. The feedback on the meetings indicated a decent amount of confusion, frustration, sometimes just outright anger, and meeting attendance really started to drop off. So probably about 6 months into the process, the future of the project was kind of unclear. There was a lot of concern that the community council might just fade away. And indeed, there were some folks who did leave at that point. So that really brings me to the meat of this presentation, which is trying to unpack exactly what went wrong here, how it was repaired, and how to avoid going down the same path in the future as white dominant systems are really working toward becoming more equitable. So to better understand what was going on and hopefully inform an effective intervention, we conducted a series of in-depth interviews with the community council as well as with the project team. So this slide and the next slide really outlines what we heard from folks. Excuse me, there's my phone. And what we heard, I have to say, was both really profound and unfortunately kind of ordinary, right? In that it told a story that is really very familiar to communities of color. I also want to acknowledge that although this feedback was pretty disappointing for the project team to hear, it really was such a gift from the community council. Folks could have easily walked, and as I said, some certainly did, and I, for one, would never fault them for having done that. But we so appreciate the generosity and the courage of those who did choose to hang in there and try again. So what did we hear in these interviews? For one, we heard a pretty fundamental frustration with the facilitation approach. And this was an approach that was actually imported from high tech and originally intended for designing smartphone apps. So on the face of it, maybe not a great fit. We also heard dissatisfaction with a facilitator who was neither familiar with childcare nor with the community-based organizations that were represented at the table, and who failed right off the bat to attend to power differentials within the group. There was really no explicit discussion or strategizing around equity concerns within the group itself. We also heard a sense that the council was being asked to advise on things that it seemed had already been determined. So folks asked really what was their role? Were they being asked to simply rubber stamp something that had already been determined? Similarly, we heard concerns that the problem itself had perhaps been misdiagnosed, since it was defined without input from the communities in question, and that in turn the remedy, in this case mentoring, might just be missing the mark. Folks repeatedly raised the concern that no childcare providers nor trainers representing the communities in question had been directly included in the needs assessment that was used to inform the initial design. So continuing with what we heard in the interviews, we also heard some pretty fundamental questions around how quality was being defined, both in terms of the assumptions around low quality care happening in marginalized communities and what high quality training might actually mean. So community council members asked if the term quality simply reflected white dominant norms and assumptions. Is there really one correct way to provide training or even to provide childcare? Folks likewise advocated very passionately for the strengths and skills of culturally specific trainers, providers, and families, a perspective that they felt had been largely overlooked in the original design. Finally, interviewees also talked about the dynamics within the group, within the community council, which was comprised of both BIPOC folks and white women who were already pretty deeply embedded within the mainstream system. So BIPOC folks reported often feeling unheard or disregarded by the white women. And the white women often expressed frustration in turn that their system expertise was not being utilized. So given all these factors that were identified, and it was a lot, it felt really big, we realized that this could have ended badly and simply reinforced the history of mistrust that many folks were already bringing into the pilot. However, in this case, there actually really is a happy ending. And what was different here, different in my own experience and different as reported by the community council members, was that project leadership really took this feedback to heart. In response, they made a number of pretty fundamental pivots that by all accounts salvaged the project and laid a strong foundation for a much more authentic process moving forward. So what exactly changed in the aftermath of these interviews? I have this sort of rainbow flower here. First, the funders got the message. They really listened. They threw their support, including, of course, financial, behind a number of mid-course corrections, including extending the overall project timeline to compensate for the delays caused by the initial missteps. The meeting facilitator was replaced and new project management brought on, both of whom were familiar with the system, highly responsive to feedback, and with strong commitments to equity. The project team made a very conscious decision to slow down and invest considerable time in repairing the damage and really building the relationships within the community council. This included participating in equity training together and a very conscious and articulated shift away from a deficit mindset toward a greater understanding of the many strengths of marginalized trainers, childcare providers, and communities. OCCD likewise redefined its role more clearly as supportive consultants to a process that would be led, so not advised, but led by the community council. And lastly, there was really a renewed emphasis on incorporating this real-time feedback that we were collecting from the community council to keep the process accountable by identifying and really working to address issues as they arose. So fundamentally, I think these pivots really empowered the community council to become the true design architects of the pilot and change the conversation around assimilation to the current system to one focused on system change. The original intervention mentoring was replaced by a number of other key strategies focused on making the system more accessible and responsive. And that kind of brings us up to the present. The Community Council has generated a number of recommendations for longer-term system change that will be presented to the Early Learning Division in the very near future. And a lot of people have asked me about whether or not I would be presenting these recommendations today, but that's really not the purpose of this presentation. And also, more importantly, I don't really think it's my role to do that. That rests with the Community Council as the true project leaders. So the next slide really brings us to the lessons learned, kind of predictable mistakes that happen all too often and undermine the success of the many equity-focused initiatives that are going on all around us right now. As somebody that I showed this slide to earlier referred to these blue blobs as puddles, which I hadn't even thought of. I saw them as paint splatters, which I thought was funny about, we all bring our different perspectives. But I think the puddle one is a really good metaphor. As white dominant systems are really working to move toward becoming more equitable, these puddles, I think, are all around us, just waiting to be stepped in. And here I've just highlighted, I think, a few of the worst offenders. For example, right, we have this ubiquitous deficit-based thinking and an awful lot of implicit assumptions around what quality means that probably need to be unpacked. We need to recognize that it's not just neutral, universal science at play here, but white dominant values and structures that often get in the way. I would also argue that we need to stop centering white experts to define the problems and design the responses. So chances are good if we continue in that vein, right, that we will continue to step in these puddles. Likewise, we need to genuinely share power with so-called advisory groups. I think this is absolutely key to building trust and supporting authentic partnership. And in facilitating such groups, we need to be thoughtful about membership and the potential power differentials. Will there actually be space and support to elevate the voices of communities of color and other marginalized communities? Finally, I would say I've learned that we need to slow down and really invest that time in building real relationships. So there are so many historical harms in these spaces, and there just aren't any shortcuts to healing in the name of efficiency. And of course, we need to learn a whole lot more about what it means to authentically center equity all throughout the process. Something, right, that is just infinitely more easily said than done. So this is my kind of wacky slide here I wanted to leave us with at the end. These are some of the larger questions that have really come up for me in the course of working on this evaluation and continue to just bump around my head on almost a daily basis. And there's clearly not time to jump into each one of these, but I was hoping that you might take them away with you for further reflection and discussion with colleagues, maybe even beginning in the breakout rooms today. And I just wanted to say, you know, that growing master trainers for me has been an incredible learning journey, and I am so grateful to have had the opportunity. It's really changed my perspective in some pretty fundamental ways. I think it's helped me become a whole lot better at my job, and frankly, helped me become kind of a better human being. So with that, I would actually like to hand it over now to Lupe and Mira, the two community council members who have graciously volunteered to share with us some of their own perspectives and insights into the GMT process. I have so much respect for these two women, and I'm really delighted that you have the opportunity to hear directly from them today. And I'm going to stop sharing. And maybe, Lupe, you can take it away from here.
I got a little bit of background noise about to happen, so can Mira go first, and then I'll be able to.
Mira, we can't hear you.
If Mira's having trouble, I can go. Just bear with me on the background noise, and I have background things going on here too. So that's why I'm not turning on my video. Also, my internet gets pretty spotty when I have my video on. So that's why I declined the video. Thank you, Lorelei, so much for that brief overview of our time. And I say brief because we've been going at this for about 3 years as a community council. My name is Lupe Campos, and I work for Latino Network that is based here in Portland, Oregon. And I am the Associate Director of Preschool Programs. So I started with this program back when they first put the community council together. However, before we started as a community council, as Lorelei had mentioned, there was already this predetermined way of doing this project, and a way that was determined without the culturally specific organizations from the community council as part of it. Mainly, from my understanding, was a bunch of people from the dominant culture, white culture, around the table, putting this project together, and then bringing it to us for us to advise on, as Lorelei mentioned in her slides. So I was one of the ones that was very frustrated, didn't feel heard, was like, why am I here? What's the point? What is my role here? And in hearing the presentation by Shannon, which I is great to the work that is being done to drive towards equity, but I also heard that of those samples taken, 85% of the kids were white. I heard a lot about trauma-informed. I did hear mention of the historical trauma of racism and everything, but honestly, what this project in GMT lacked at the beginning, it wasn't fully understood. And also other projects that I hear when wanting to bring more diversity and equity to the work and to the field, I don't hear the word cultural humility a lot. And that is very important in this work that is being done to drive towards equity, because everyone has to recognize their own biases, and when it comes to race and culture, and recognize that just because you know certain stuff about a certain culture doesn't mean you know it all, and that every person in the culture are individuals, so they might not even identify fully with the knowledge of their culture that you have, right? I say that, for example, because a lot of times in my life, people have assumed I'm Catholic because I'm Latina. And they put that assumption on me, and they get frustrated when I say no. And they're like, because they believe it to be true, but you're Latina, and most Mexicans or Latinos are Catholic, right? No. Just because the majority does not mean that all are, right? We're individual people, as well as having our culture. And it also, different people identify differently within their own culture as well. So that's something that, like, with these projects, or as I am part of advisory committees or committees that are inviting me, a person of color, into the table to drive towards change or to get my opinion. I mean, that's like where the tokenism that Lorelei is talking about, that is something that we always question when we're asked. So it's something that we always say, like, do we want to be a part of this? Because is it just to say, oh, we have a brown person here? Just to say that we got them in here, and they informed. But truly, are you really putting that at the forefront? And that's what in this GMT, at the beginning, it wasn't, until we, until the process, and until Lorelei really conducting those in focus interviews with us midway through. She was like, whoa, I'm hearing this over and over again. And then that's when a drive to change the dynamic of GMT happened. And we got new facilitators, and we got new people at the table from different organizations as well. And then that's when we started to make progress. And the one thing that my thing that I always say is, like, when things get put together, they get to put together, like what Laura was saying in the white dominant idea of quality, right? The idea of quality to the dominant culture, and that it isn't the same thing in all cultures. And so I start to wonder things like this group, this childcare resource group. I'm looking at those that are on video, and I'm not seeing people of color, and I know about this project that is called the Oregon Child Care Project, and it is made up of about 9 organizations that are culturally specific and equity focused, It's 6. It's a coalition of 6 progressive race and gender justice nonprofit organizations working to build a comprehensive childcare system in Oregon. So my wonder is this group connected to that group? Because if you're really wanting to work towards that change, do that research in an equitable way, this group of the Oregon Child Care Coalition should be a part of that. Should be a part of that research, should be a part of designing that professional development for early childhood, should be a part of all that. So you can get the perspective also in different cultures. What does PD mean to you? What does it look like to you? And that's something that in this project is a come away for me as well, and grateful that there was change that happened, that our voices were heard. Because at the beginning, I was one of the ones that I felt was somebody in the project, a white person, she responded a certain way to something I said and was I felt attacked. I felt like what I said was not validated, that it didn't matter, that there was excuses. And that was something like, the only reason I kept going to that is because, they gave us the contract, we already signed, like, let me do. And also I'm not a person that quits. But that's my biggest thing to say here is that if things are getting put together to drive towards equity, the saying that at the forefront also is the communities of color, we want them to thrive. We want to bring equity into services that we're providing for them. Then the PAC, Parent Accountability Council, that's just part of the governing body of our early learning hub here in Multnomah, one of their guiding principles is nothing done for us without us. So nothing put together without the opinions of those that you're trying to say, this is going to help you. This is going to serve you. This is going to help you thrive. Okay, were there voices in there? Did they say what they needed to thrive? So that is the main thing when it comes to these type of projects, that when you're trying to drive towards that systematic change is thinking about that. How are we doing that? Are we including the voices of those that need the systematic change for all to thrive? And that's all, and I'll pass it on to Mira.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, it sounds like you might have 2 audios going. You might need to mute your computer.
Oh, okay. There's an echo. Sorry.
We'll figure it out.
Just
Okay,
mute the computer.
thank you. I just wanted to first and foremost acknowledge Lorelei and her skills as a real intentional researcher. I don't think this project would have made such a stride if it was with somebody else. I was really interested in it because it talked about equity, and one of the goals was to navigate barriers for the marginalized child care providers. And we have had so many bumps along the way. And once we course corrected, sorry, I'm so sorry about the reception.
Mira, if you turn down, sorry to interrupt. I just want you to be able to think and talk. If you turn down the volume on your computer.
Yeah, I will. Again. Is that better?
No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, this is where I want to just come over and help you. What if Eric, do you have a thought about how to?
Mira, if you're in the room with your computer, why don't you just, if you can step out of the room with your phone, because we're hearing your computer come through your phone and it's creating that echo loop. So either mute your speakers on your computer or step out of the room with your phone.
Yeah, I've muted the speakers. I've had this trouble. Is this better?
That's better. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's great. We did it. Good job. Thank you.
It's great for me too. Sorry about it. I've been having challenges all week. So I'll start again. So part of it was that halfway through, I really wanted to back off and not continue with the project. I'm from Neighborhood House, and we are a community-based organization. We are not culturally specific, and we actually are more culturally agile. So we brought a different perspective to the council, and it was very exciting because we do have two active networks of in-home childcare providers. However, when we started, one of the biggest gaps that evolved and that was really pretty apparent was that the outcomes had already been set without input from childcare providers who we termed as marginalized, and there was no evidence of any representation from them. Halfway through, there was a course correction, and and what was very attractive was the diverse leaders on the council. There was community organizations, culturally specific organizations, and all the educational institutes. However, there was a lot of discrepancy in our perspectives, and we were just not coming together. One of the challenges was that the pilot project was so cramped initially. We needed to finish this work in a year, then it was extended. And my experience with pilot projects has always been that we need to step back, sit back, nurture what we have, reevaluate over and over again. And none of this would have been possible if Lorelei hadn't been intentional, committed, and had a holistic perspective on the evaluation piece. Every step of the way, she changed course in evaluation techniques. I worked with a number of researchers, and she brought such a fresh perspective in listening, intentional interviewing our childcare providers, our network coordinators, and even changing the format of collecting data. It wasn't stringent. It was both a narrative as well as surveys, but her interpretation and her constant communication was, I think, what has taken this project to this level. The other piece was having a training, walking the bumpy road with everybody and then meeting them and looping back to what was our original thought behind this. We wanted to include, as Lupe said, all the marginalized in-home childcare providers, but are we making an effort to reach out to them, or are we imposing our assumptions on them? So I've been really excited about it now. We have a number of participants who are going to be graduating and expanding their businesses and mentoring others to join the project. And I have to say that if it wasn't the dedication of the team, PSU and Kim and all the community participants, and also having the consistency midway when people left and filtered off, and then we had a core group where we could air our concerns, express our frustrations, and build that relationship. So as Lorelei said, it was extremely basic. It was all about building relationships, and that's what early childhood is all about. Thank you, and I'm so sorry for all the bumps I've had with technology today. Hello?
Wonderful. Thank you, Mira. I'm so
Sorry,
glad
I
we
can't
worked.
see you.
No problem. It worked. We got through it. Believe me, we're all together in this.
Right.
Thank you. Lorelai, did you have any finishing words, or shall we?
I think they said it all.
I think so too. Yeah. I would just like to echo the appreciation that we are hearing in the chat from many of, thank you all for this very honest conversation that needs to happen, and very much appreciated Mira and Lupe for speaking up and for joining this call. Really appreciate it. So at this point, I think we could, if there's a pressing question or comment that can be made, we can take about a minute to do so. Also, feel free to watch the chat. You're getting some nice feedback in there too. Okay, so I really hope that this sets a stage for the breakout rooms to come. Before we dive into those, we have one more speaker with us here today, Isela Morales, who is from the CCR&R Community Action in the Marion County region. And I'm going to pass it over to Isela.
Share my screen. Let's see.
Yep, we see that.
Yeah? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are you guys seeing my which display?
We're seeing the correct display.
Okay, perfect. I'm always afraid to show my notes. Right, got it. Well, good morning. Thank you for having me here. As you can see, I'm an infant and toddler specialist of child care resources and referrals of Marion, Polk, and Downhill counties. My name is Gisela Morales. I was born and raised in Valle Nacional. It's a beautiful town in Oaxaca, Mexico. I had worked in early childhood for over 19 years. I was a kindergarten teacher in Mexico for about 6 years before I came to this country. Here in Oregon, I worked as a preschool teacher in Head Start. Then I was a therapeutic teacher and a child development specialist for the Early Head Start Child Care Partnerships. When I worked for the Early Head Start CCP, Child Care Partnerships, I work with both center and family child care providers, focus on infants and toddlers, and to support their families. Living here in the United States has provided me with opportunities to grow and develop both of my personal and professional life. Last year, I came to work for CCR&R as their infants and toddler specialist in QIS, and doing kind of both. I really enjoy supporting providers' needs and challenges, as well as I love to celebrate their success. What I do as a QIS, quality improvement specialist, let me click here. I guide them into the Oregon Register Professional Development Step System. I guide the early learning professionals on the Spark portfolio process, helping them with all the resources that they need. Technical assistance, consultation to all providers, not only the ones that are in my network. So I try to support all providers that are calling and asking for support. I provide set 1 and set 2 trainings monthly. This means I had to send proposals for this to get approved. I try really hard to focus on infants and toddlers for my trainings, so that I focus on those ages in specific. There's more. I guide providers getting their Child Development Associate, CDA. So some of them are really wanted to get their CDA. So I try to support them as much as I can. I do monthly one-on-one visits where I talk to them for, I don't know, an hour and a half to set short and long-term quality improvement program and educational goals. And I also do a follow-up. So I try, this is personal, that in 3 months, maybe providers achieve their short-term goals. I provide assistance with technology challenges when needed. This happens a lot lately since we start with all this situation back in March. It was a lot of this needed for me to help them to create emails accounts, or how to do Zoom, how to get the apps in their phones, how to navigate, a lot of technology support. And I put it in red. COVID-19 resources and guidance from the Early Learning Division. When we start working from home in March, I found myself every morning going to the Early Learning Division page and look for all the information to provide to my network. I have been sending them emails pretty much every morning since March. And I always apologize to them, like, this is Gisela again, but I have this news that is important. So a lot of resources too. I also track my network. I'm a tracking person. I love to track data. I track the activities, and I keep my network update in the NACAWare system. I'm a bilingual support, as you can hear my accent. I help providers to understand letters, emails, getting to understand all the emails that they get from the Early Learning Division about grants and supplies. Sometimes everything is in English first, and then let's say in 2 or 3 days, we're gonna send the Spanish one. So I always want them to know what's going on and not wait 2 or 3 days. So I always try to translate it for them and ask them to screenshot the emails, and I will brief, get the key points for them to know what's going on before waiting for the Spanish translation. This is for everybody, like I assist programs as they progress on their license. It's not only for my network, for the 15 people that I have. This is for all providers that call the CCR number and they're looking to be a provider. If they are asking for pretty much any questions that they have, right? either asking for their oral steps, for classes, for CPRs, for DHS orientations. I always try to give them an answer or send it with the right person. Well, now I will provide 2 examples of how I supported providers. This provider in particular, she was in jeopardy of losing her licensure. So what did I do? I provide very intentional referral support and technical assistance to this registered family provider in order for her to maintain her license. I remember some of the requirements needed to be completed within the first 19 days, I think, when they signed the agreement. So we did have a little time, and as soon as I got the email from the state specialist asking me to support this provider, I called her and I went with the licensed provider to meet her, and I will start working with her to in order to meet everything that she needed in the first 90 days. Begin by building that trusting relationship. For me is super, super important. Connection for me is the key to start supporting providers. I feel that without connection, it won't work. I like to spend time getting to know them, and most important, how they want me to support them. It's not like this is my plan and this is my way to support. No, I want you to tell me, how do you want me to support you? I visit twice a month to set short and long-term goals. I always like to ask them little details of their days to see what will be the best time for visits. I like to be respectful with their time. And something that I do in my first visit, it's get to know them well. And I ask them if they had the time for me, an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, I can spend those hours with them. But I really want to connect with them. We set strategies to work as a team. Yeah, I'm gonna support you. I wanted to work with you as a team, right? I sat with her and talk about how can we best work together. I always ask, how do you want me to communicate with you? What would be the easiest way? So she's like, not emails, because I don't know how to. I don't do emails. And I say, cool. So what you feel more comfortable with? It's like text, or you can call me. So I always like to ask what it makes you comfortable with, right? So I ask, like, do you want me to send reminders? Do you want me to print a schedule for the visits that we are scheduled right now? So for her to follow up with all the visits that we schedule. I brought resources to help with the goals, in specifics, the ones that I have the 90 days deadline. So I always try to, that the resources that I prep for her, that I prep before my visits, are very easy to read and understandable. Not too much that she can get overwhelmed, and not to use something friendly. I like to prep before each visit. I make sure all resources are, like I say, very easy to understand. I remember in this case, I made a binder for her to keep all the resources in after visit summary for her to have one place where to go and find what she was working with me. I also use a form that allows us to keep track of what we did during my visit and allows to start planning for the next visit. So I always ask, what do you need for my next visit? What do you want me to bring? It's something in specific that you are wanting right now. I always inform her about the quality best practices and to assist in putting them into practice. With her, she needed a daily routine. There was more things, right? But this is what I remember right now. She was needed a daily routine for her program. We start talking about her daily activities, and she started to mention specific times. And I was like, wow, you do have a routine. So it was in that paper that she was needing that. And she's like, yes, I just don't have it in here. It's like, well, you do have a routine. The only thing that we're gonna do, or I'm gonna help you, is to write it down and put it in a piece of paper, and then post it in your classroom. And she's like, oh, that's the routine that my specialist was talking about. Yeah, that's your daily routine. So that's what you're doing right now. You're telling me. So with this specific activity that we did, she write it down, and then I asked her, do you want her to practice with me during my next visit? Because it is more, you added a little more of activities in your day. And she says, yes, I will let you to come and see me how I follow this routine. And I did, and she did a great job. So yeah. I always take resources, materials. I took visuals. I took samples of schedules, posters. I feel that I gave her more materials that I was asked to support her. But when I saw, she was willing to do a lot of stuff and asking me for more. I don't have this washing hands poster in my bathroom. Say, oh, I have one, so let me bring it with me next time. So I was there with her to practice pretty much every visit. We talk and then we practice. It was like an hour and a half, I think, that we spent in every visit. But I feel that this can be only be possible if you have a trusting relationship. So I really like when she asked me for more resources that I wasn't aware that she was needed, or it wasn't on the email, right? When they asked me to support her. So at the end, she was asking me for more and more and more, and everything was to improve her program. So after my visit, I always type a summary. I send it to the person who asked me to support her, and to the provider in Spanish, for her to know what did we talk about that day and what did we agree for the next visit. Here is another example of a registered family provider I supported back in 2015 or 16. I remember we were recruiting to join the Early Head Start Childcare Partnership. I remember visiting potential providers to join the program. There was a lot of providers that we went to their houses and interview. A lot of them were scary, used to hear all the things that they were needed to do in case they decide to join, like the classroom environment, the early Head Start policies and procedures. They were like, oops, home visits, conference, checkpoints, observations, and all the professional requirements that this program was requiring for them to join. So I remember her face, and she was like, but that she said yes. I remember her words right now. She said, yes, I'm gonna do it. But she told me, you might regret it because I'm going to need a lot of help from you. And then we both started laughing. And yeah, so everything started with a big laugh when she said yes, but you're gonna regret it. This is what did I do. And I'm super proud of this provider because she was able to achieve a lot of stuff. I assisted her in guiding in this achievement. Within the first 18 to 24 months, she was able to get her GED diploma, citizenship. She was studying for her test and she got it. Her CDA, and plus she worked on her STAR 3. So I just contacted her. I called her 2 weeks ago, I think, and now she's working on STAR 4. I have a Spark Night meeting last night with providers, and she joined the meeting. So I was so happy to see her last night. Like I say with the other example that I say before, the trusting relationship is a key for me. I started with that. I wanted to connect with her. If we want to work, this is a lot. If I'm gonna support you in all this, so I wanted to be a team, you know, like you and I, we're gonna be a team. We wanna work together. We're gonna be in this together. So I want you to trust me, okay? So we set up a working plan, and I remember asking her all the details, how she wanted me to support. She told me she was super open, and I really appreciate that. It helps me. I did intensive visits. I remember the program was requiring only 2 visits a month. When I started with her, I had to do 3 visits a week. So I was in her house 3 times a week. So she was okay with it. So she's like, yes, please come because I need you to help me with this. So I get to know her, or her family, her husband, who I remember like always looking at me like, you're in my house every day. So and he was hesitating. He was like, this is too good for her. She was only babysitting kids. Now what she's gonna do? And I just started laughing. She's like, yeah, but like he said, this is too good. Resources, contact, scholarships, we studied together in order for her to get everything that she did in between 18 to 24 months. I tried to find the right information for her about GD classes, about the citizenship, about all the CDA. We spent afternoons after daycare hours. Yeah, so starting together, I promised her when she signed the contract with Early Head Start, you are not alone. I'm gonna help you. And if I had to study with you, I will. So technology support, she was panicked to the laptop, I remember. And even like touching the laptop and start using technology, it was a lot of support that she needed, but she did okay. So I remember one morning she called me super worried that her laptop, her screen was all black. And I was like, what happened? And she's like, I was studying last night and I think I fell asleep and my head bumped into the keyboard. And I lost everything that we did. She was super, super scared. And I said, well, no worry, it's a laptop, and I'm pretty sure we save everything in the flash drive. So, and we're gonna go to see how we can fix it. But I remember that happened. She was super scared about the laptop. Like I said before, I made myself available wherever she needed. This particular provider was willing to do everything, so I felt that I was needing to be there for her at all times with her. I always, you can do it. You can do it, because she was like, Senora Gisela, but this, but that, and like, you can do it. Let me help. Let me see where I can find over here. So all the time I encourage her, encourage and encourage. I would like to show some before and after pictures, because I think this is what it makes her story feels more real, right? When we see some results. This was before our partnerships. I put a day in here, May 2015. I took a picture the day I met her. And this is, I think, a year after. And it's her environment, it's the same pictures. She initiated all the changes. As soon as she had an idea of what she wanted to do, she texted me telling me, like, what do you think if I paint my walls? What do you think if I clean all my carpets? I'm gonna empty my room and I'm gonna clean all my house because I wanted to have everything clean. Or I did this in my backyard. So she was taking the initiative all the time, all the time. She worked super, super hard on this. And I would like to share some of the comments that I still remember. In when her name comes to my mind, I remember her words. And before I support her, she was like, I love to care for children. It is my passion. I want to do more for them. I would love to learn more about early childhood. I don't have a high education. I don't know how to use the computer. I don't have furniture and toys. I'm only the babysitter. That's what she told me when I met her. After my support, after she did all that she achieved, she said, I feel more self-confident. I am professional. My students call me teacher. The families keep in touch with me even if their children left my program. I have an appropriate environment inside and outside. Those words like they call me teacher, it hit me like I feel professional, and I always, you are a professional. You are a teacher. Well, now I'm gonna change the topic a little bit. Reading Berta's comments makes me a little sensitive. But I would like to talk a little bit about COVID-19, how, just a brief mention, how COVID has impacted my work and how I see providers and families being affected. Myself, for me, it's, I start working from home. It was a change, right? From office, 4 cups of coffees in there, 1 cup of coffees in here, different. I learned to manage webinars platforms. I wasn't familiar with all the Zoom, go to meeting, go to webinars, all the stuff. I had to learn. Intensive communication with Focus Network and my team. We get more close. I feel that the providers that I have, that I work right now, we have a very close relationship. and it got super strong from March to now because we really communicate pretty much every day. So and same with my team. Super sending texts, emails, how can we support each other? Intensive support to specific providers like technology, a lot of technology support, multitasking skills here in my house, working with my my 7-year-old online school, trying to do my work. I got a new puppy. His name is Sky. He was like he wasn't potty trained, so I had to multitask. I provide COVID-19 resources for providers and families. I have a monthly or monthly meetings with my network, and I try to put all the resources I found for families, activities for kids, how they can support the families and the kids when they are in care. For when I had these meetings with them right now, I always make sure I have the COVID-19 updates, the early learning division guidance, DHS information, the government page is always there, the resources for providers and families, posters, and everything that they need. And I give them all the information about all the trainings that we're gonna be providing during that month. For providers, COVID-19 impact. For a lot of them got confused and scared. In March, I remember they were like, oh, what did I do? I closed, I opened. So confused, very overwhelmed. Yes. A lot of calls every day. And I become a like listener, just listen, yeah. And because they didn't know what to do back in March. Technology barriers. Some of them, I had one provider that I had to buy a computer because she didn't have a smartphone. And I say, well, let me see how can we do this. And then she called me the next day and she's like, no, my son told me that he's gonna give me a laptop. Like, okay. So yeah, like a technology equipment not available. I just, yeah. Money, it was an issue for a lot of them. Some of them closed. One of them were very frustrating with the situation, and she was like, I'm not gonna be a provider anymore. I'm gonna work in the fields. I don't feel that I can do this anymore. I work with her, I support with her, and I say, just wait a little bit. You can get 3 or 4 kids right now, and have DHS. You can build DHS, sending all the DHS resources in unemployment and everything. So she was able to. She's still a provider, so she's open right now, and she's super happy. Some of them supplies, it was an issue for them, even if they were getting supplies from the early learning. A lot of them, they were telling me, hey, he said, I went to Costco and there are run of wipes and I need more wipes and warmer. So they were having some issues with supplies and spending more money. They weren't getting a lot of money from enrollment fee, for the kids in their care, but they were spending more money, buying more supplies to clean. So our relationship, like I said before, it got strong. So the 15 providers that I have right now, we have a great communication right now. And I feel that part of the reason is because of this situation. And pretty much all of them attend those meetings. If I send them a text that we're gonna have a meeting, and all of them are there on time. They wanted to hear, they wanted to share, they wanted to talk to each other. We wanted to check how we're doing. And I always get them like 20 minutes just to chat, just how you're doing. And then we'll start to discuss all the resources and everything that I prep for them. Thank you so much. I don't know, I think I took more time. But thank you so much for letting me share my experiences. I appreciate this time, and I'm open to your questions. And I put my information in there, my email and my mail address, my phone number, where I work. If someone wants to contact me or asking questions, I'm open to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isela. When you get a chance, you're gonna have to look at the chat because you did this was amazing. Just the amount of appreciation people are expressing is really great. You've done a beautiful job of making it clear where the work is and where the magic, as you mentioned in some pre-meetings, where you do your magic, and where everyone in the field is doing a lot of magic right now, and so we thank you. That was wonderful, and I have a feeling you're going to be contacted by many folks. Kirsten is interested in your information in the chat, and others too. And yes, no problem. We are. It's so important for this whole audience to hear your story and to hear what you're doing. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, Megan.
I'm happy to take, like I said, we're off time, but that's okay. If we can take a few minutes for a large group discussion, if anybody feels like they want to unmute and say something or reiterate a question that was in the chat.
I just have a comment for Gisela. Gisela, just hearing you speak and a lot of us are in the same boat, and the amount of dedication and love and patience that requires from us bilingual people, from everybody, monolingual, bilingual. But, bilingual folks, we definitely face different challenges. We face just timing. Helping one provider takes us sometimes weeks, sometimes months. And, you did a beautiful job at expressing and walk us through that journey that a lot of us have to go through when one paper gets released in English, all the hurdles that we have to jump because we don't have 2 days, we don't have 3 days. So that was amazing. I think bringing that to light, representing a lot of us bilingual quality care specialists, I think you touch, if not 100% of the points, 99.9. So
thank you so much.
I really appreciate your time, and thank you for taking the time to bringing that to light, not only the success, but also the amount of work and the hurdles, and that we are doing well, but we have ways to go to bring true equity and in everything, in all our system, to non-native English-speaking folks.
Yep. Thanks, Nadia.
Thank you, Nadia. Anyone else? Well, I think this is, I will say this has been amazing, amazing morning so far for me. Let's take this opportunity to take a quick break. I know we've been online for a while. We will go into our breakout rooms, and I hope that these conversations can continue. And again, reflections, thoughts, And yeah, so let's take a few minutes, and then when we'll go ahead and set up the breakout rooms now so that you can go, and then when you're back, you'll see a little check-in, the box to click on to join your room. And for moderators and such, we'll come back together at about 11:25 or so, just for a conclusion. But otherwise, let's continue the conversation. Thank you.